Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday, about half the work week in the rearview mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Jacob Beck and Jordan Kitchens back there on the ones and twos, and we got lots to do for 2 hours. Is the Saints' best potential draft pick going to be there at 9? We'll talk about that in the next segment. It's What If Wednesday. There are a lot of those flying around on Twitter right now, so we'll get to a lot of that. The SEC has set a lot of records in this NCAA basketball tournament. Touch on that a little bit at the end of the hour. LSU has gone shopping in the portal again for basketball. The women's team has seen one of its contributors leave today in basketball, and then the SEC baseball power rankings coming up at 2:30. So lots and lots and lots to do. Lock us in until 3 o'clock. Let's start today the same way we start every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
LSU just keeps playing great baseball in the midweek. There's really no other way to say it. They're 10-0 in the midweek and really have not even potentially stubbed their toe. There was a clunker of an early game against North Dakota State, but outside of that, it's really been rock solid. And last night was more of that for this LSU baseball team. I thought they were really, really good in every phase of the game last night. I thought the pitching got off to a nice start. William Schmidt, Cooper Williams, and Maverick Rizzi combined to throw the first 6 innings of the game. That's 3 freshmen who have not necessarily excelled on the weekend, but have massive potential and need innings. And while you could have watched last night and saw William Schmidt start a midweek game and throw 51 pitches and said to yourself, hey, Jay Johnson said 3 weeks ago his days of pitching in the midweek are over around here. Well, here's the deal. William Schmidt needs to pitch. And if you don't feel like you can go to him in the 7th inning of a tight SEC game right this second, which is fine, he needs to pitch in the midweek. He needs to get innings. And really, as much as I would like to hold him for the weekend against Oklahoma, like, he needs innings. So, yes, I did sit here 2.5 weeks ago and told you, like, yeah, they don't need to burn him on Tuesdays. You don't need to develop a 4th starter. That's not an important thing. You need to have those guys ready to go out of the bullpen in league play. I can change my tune a little bit, just a little bit, based on the last 2.5 weeks of information, which tells me William Schmidt's not getting enough innings to improve. It's one thing to do it on the side mound. It's one thing to do it off flat ground. It's one thing to do it in the bullpen. It's one thing to do it on the mound in a game. And that's what you needed to see from William Schmidt last night. And the line's not going to blow you away. 2 2/3 innings, 3 hits, an earned run, a walk, and 2 strikeouts. But it was just watching the outing looked good. He came out early in the game and threw strikes. He threw a lot of fastballs, which I enjoyed. Like, just go challenge him. You don't need to be too cute. You don't need to throw a ton of 2-0 breaking balls. You don't need to throw a ton of first pitch breaking balls. You can mix those in. It's plenty good enough. But go challenge guys. It's Louisiana freaking Tech. And he did that for the most part. Now, he gives up the 1 home run that Ruddle really got up into the jet stream out to left field. I would consider that probably a pop-up. But it went out of the ballpark. It counts. But I thought that Schmidt was good. I thought that Williams came in and also threw a good amount of strikes. He got through 2 innings of shutout baseball with 23 pitches. He did issue 2 walks. I thought he was a little bit more competitive than I've seen him at other points. So I liked those 2 guys' outings. I thought that Maverick Rizzi was just fine as well. He threw an inning and a third, just gave up 1 hit. So that's your pitching getting off to a good start, I thought. Then LSU offensively, kind of what they've done. I mean, they didn't do like they did to ULL. They scored 9 runs in the first inning, but they came out and scored 4. You get a walk from Curiel, which you're so used to seeing now at the top. Jones doesn't force it. He draws a walk. Dickinson rifles a double down in the corner in left field. A little bit later in the inning with 2 outs, see Cade Arambidi once again coming up with a really nice swing. He's taking a massive amount of advantage of his midweek starts. We talked about it yesterday entering the game. You saw it again in the game on Tuesday night. They want Luis Hernandez to catch on the weekends. That's awesome. He's their best option. He's hitting the ball out of the ballpark. His defense has really improved since February. He should be the guy. But Cade Arambidi is the future of that position. And it would be a little bit short-sighted to just sit him on the bench. So 2 things about him playing. 1, he gets the opportunity to get out there and get the reps. And 2, Luis Hernandez can rest in the midweek. And he did. And Arambidi comes up with a 2-out, 2-run single up the middle. Big-time swing for him. He did strike out 3 times, but you go back over the course of the last 3 midweek games where he has started, he's got 5 hits and 8 runs driven in over those 3 games. That's really good stuff from Cade Arambidi, so I was thrilled to see that as well. So LSU got off to a 4-0 start. Jared Jones sinks down into his knees and drives one out of the ballpark in the 2nd inning for a home run. You saw another 4 spot in the 7th there. You look at it statistically speaking for LSU. In the game, Ethan Fry was probably the biggest story of the game. He tattooed another home run, right home run, I might add, which is something you saw him do over the weekend. You saw him take out Pico Khan with the home run. It's his left on right. Like, you've seen him really excel no matter the situation they put him in. He's going to make it very difficult to take him out of the lineup. Last night, his final line, 3 of 4 on the night, 4 runs driven in. And he scored a couple times. So awesome work from Ethan Fry in the game. And Daniel Dickinson continues to hit. He was 2 for 4 with the double we talked about, scored 2 runs, was awesome in the ball game. So that is your look at it from a defensive perspective and an offensive perspective, and LSU didn't make an error. So you got a good job from your pitching early in the game. The offense took control, and then you didn't do anything careless or sloppy. You made the plays that you needed to play on the defensive side. So I thought that LSU was just excellent from start to finish in this game. Louisiana Tech has won 3 weekends in a row. They had won 7 of 10. They've been a pretty functional ball club this season. They're not great. There have been better Tech teams. I mean, Tech has been a team that hosted a regional. So you've seen better teams than this in Ruston, but it's a team that on a given Tuesday can really put up a fight, and they didn't. And Louisiana Lafayette is a team that on a given Tuesday can put up a fight, and they didn't last week. I mean, UNO is playing good baseball this year. Couldn't put up a fight against LSU. And that's what you want to see. I talked about this yesterday, and I'll continue to say this, even though there's nothing to back it up with this team. Statistically speaking, you're going to lose one of these games, but you don't want to lose 5. And LSU has done such a good job in the midweek to this point of being a team that now 10-0 in the midweek that you've given yourself some insurance. If for some reason over one of the next 2 or 3 midweeks you go out there and walk 6 guys and kick it 3 times and then they hit 2 home runs, well, that is happening to a lot of teams. Texas was on the rope last night. I actually didn't even check to see if they lost that game. But you saw 2 weeks ago, Tennessee got tripped up in the midweek. Let's see if Texas actually came back and won that. They were down by 3 in the 8th inning, I know. And then I stopped tuning in to the Texas State game. They did end up losing 5-3. So that's a team that's played great baseball. They just went up to Missouri and swept. You know that they beat LSU 2 out of 3 of the week prior to that. They went to Starkville and swept, and they just came out in a game against Texas State and didn't swing the bats. So like it happens, and it has not happened to this LSU team to this point. I mean, there's already a regional projection that's come out today. Baseball America had theirs. LSU was the 5 national seed. D1 Baseball was doing theirs as I came on the air, but it's live on YouTube, so I was looking at it, and they had LSU as the 8th national seed. Like, as y'all well know, you've put yourself in a great position right now. One midweek loss here or there is not going to do much to alter that, but it is nice to just continue to see LSU consistently go out there and handle their business in the midweek. Because I'll tell you this, and this is a little bit too far in advance, but just something that I consider as you look at the future for this team. When we talk about LSU baseball, we talk about getting to a regional and hosting a regional. We talk about being a top 8 seed, playing in a super, getting to Omaha, and that's something we discuss in January around here, February, and certainly now as we've gotten into April. It's just the way that we frame our conversations. If they do something like last year and they go out there and they start 3-12, well, we change the conversation. But more often than not, we're talking about how to position yourself for the postseason, right? And that's something that I think is a reasonable conversation to have about this team. And the team that comes in here, if and when LSU is a host and is that 4 seed, is going to look a lot like Louisiana Tech potentially. Is going to look a lot like Louisiana Lafayette potentially. Is going to look a lot like New Orleans potentially. And the fact that LSU has consistently gone out there and handled their business against those teams gives you a good feeling. Does not mean you're going to dominate the first time out in the regional when it actually counts. But it's just, I think about all these things in passing as the season progresses. It's just part of the 56-game grind that you go through. And yeah, we put a ton of emphasis, and for good reason, on what you do on the weekend. We put a ton of emphasis in what your conference record is, what your conference standing is, for good reason. We look at RPI and all that kind of stuff that goes into it. But just one of the things that I look at is how are you handling your business against guys that don't throw 96 with big sliders. It's a different level of pitching that you're looking at. And LSU consistently is going out there, especially in the first inning, and going to work. I mean, putting up big run totals against ULL, big run totals in the game last night. And that's what you like to see from this team. It's more important how they play the next 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Norman, than what we saw last night. However, it's just something to file away as we inch toward the postseason here. So LSU gets a nice win over Louisiana Tech. Tigers scored 12 runs on 9 hits without an error. Louisiana Tech, 3 runs on 7 hits. They did make 1 error. Just a side note there, cool little moment for Zeb Ruddle, as I mentioned, and then Brody Dross, both those two guys, former LSU Tigers who were here. Zeb Ruddle for 2 years, Brody Dross for 2 years. Those two guys, each homer in their return to the box in a different color uniform. I guess I'll mention the uniform briefly. Just an embarrassment that Tech would go out there in those uniforms. They had Ruston over the front like they were the American Legion Summer League team. I don't even like the Stars and Stripes thing they had going on. Louisiana Tech, very sneakily, has great colors and a great logo. I love the Louisiana with the T on it. I think Louisiana Tech's got great aesthetics. Last night they looked awful, and they paid for it. I doubt it was the uniforms that got them beat last night. It was probably the team in the pinstripes, but in any event, Tech did not look the part last night. Just putting rust. If LSU ever came out in Baton Rouge on the front of their uniform, I wouldn't care for that very much. But here we are. All right, that's a look at LSU baseball. That's our Genesis opening drive. There's one guy the Saints could pick at 9 that I think would be better than any other pick they could make. I saw that they're bringing him in for a visit. Is it possible that they could take him at 9? We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Vaughn and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. When I say remodel, a lot of people back, I'm like, oh, God, that sounds really expensive. And you can do a really expensive remodel. That's certainly a possibility. But it doesn't have to be a really expensive, really invasive, and time-consuming remodel. Things like tub-to-shower conversions can be done very, very quickly with David Duvall and his team. You take out that tub that you never use, it's dingy and old. Maybe it doesn't even work anymore because it's an older house, and you want to put something in that's fresh, that's new, that's clean, that's aesthetically pleasing and functional. Put in a gorgeous glass walk-in shower. You can do that. If you got one of those bathrooms that maybe was very popular in the 80s and 90s that has the big, huge jacuzzi tub and maybe the small stand-in shower, and you don't really like the room in that shower even though you use it all the time, well, go ahead and turn that into a closet, which is a great linen closet, and then take that tub out, put a shower in. These are the kind of things that you can do that don't take a ton of time, don't have to be prohibitively expensive. David Duvall and his team are happy to walk you through the entire process. Start that process at onebathandclosets.com today. Get that free consultation. David Duvall will tell you how that process works when he sits down with you. And he'll do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. It's One Bath and Closets, and you can find him online at onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Chugging right along here, Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. What If Wednesday coming up in about 15 minutes. If you've got some what ifs, hit me on Twitter at HuntPalmer88. We've already got a number of those in there. And then, of course, in the Bayou Ford chat, we are always happy to hear from you. I'm sure we'll hear from you in about 40 seconds when I go into this Saints topic, because that's generally how things go in the Bayou Ford chat. As y'all know, the NFL allows you to bring in a number of draft prospects for visits in the lead up to the draft. And the Saints are certainly doing a lot of homework. We've talked a ton about the Saints and what they've done from a quarterback perspective, but there are other players that obviously the Saints are bringing in and heavily considering. And the one that caught my eye today is a visit that the Saints are going to take, I believe, is the best possible scenario for the New Orleans Saints in this draft. That includes every player on the board, all of them. And it's because of the position he plays, that current depth chart on the Saints roster, and the spot where the Saints pick. I think it is the best case scenario. And before I get to the name and get to the position and get to the reasons why I think this, I think it's important that I start with a caveat that I don't think he's going to be there when the Saints pick. That's just the reality of the situation. The Saints are at 9. It feels like you probably need to be closer to 5 to get there. And before we get to talking about him, I don't favor the Saints trading up for him. While I think he is the best fit for New Orleans, I don't favor trading up because I do not believe the Saints are in a position to mortgage draft picks, to give away draft picks, to get rid of assets for one player. You need to take as many young, cheap players as you can. And getting rid of them, no matter if they're second or third round picks, is just not the way the Saints need to operate. So with that out there, the Saints are bringing in Mason Graham, Michigan defensive tackle, for a visit. And I think this would be a grand slam of a pick for the Saints. Why do I say that? Well, one, it's just the prospect, right? Like, he is considered a top 5 player by just about every draft analyst that you look at. He's a guy that was massively productive at Michigan in his time there. If you turn on the tape of his performance against Ohio State this past season, we all realize just how good Ohio State was this year, right? You look at that tape, he was wrecking the Buckeyes, wrecking them at the point of attack. And you look at, first of all, the Saints, and while Brian Brzee has really good numbers and production from a sacks perspective, he's not great against the run. Now, he can get there. He's a third-year player. But he's not great against the run right now. You look at Colin Saunders in the last year of his deal. Yeah, you brought in Devon Godshaw, but that's not a guy that you expect to be a long-term fix at the position. He's up there in age and has been a little bit declining. So you have a need, a defensive tackle, to pair with Brian Brzee to be a run stopper. And Mason Graham is thought as the best run stopper in this draft. And then you just consider what's important in the league. And one of the things that the really good teams have is just elite interior defensive line play. You look at the Chiefs and what Chris Jones does to opposing teams. And I'm not telling you that Mason Graham is a lock to be Chris Jones. Chris Jones is a multi-time All-Pro. But guys that go in the first 10 picks of the draft, a lot of times are considered potential multi-time All-Pros. You look at what the Eagles did to the Saints in Week 3 with Jalen Carter. They couldn't block him. They could not run their offense because they could not handle Jalen Carter. And that was when the Saints were looking good on offense. And again, I'm not telling you that Mason Graham's guaranteed to be as good as Jalen Carter, but they come from the same profile. Massively productive interior defensive linemen from big-time football powers, national championship pedigree. That's what you're talking about. When you talk about Mason Graham, that's what you're talking about when you talk about Jalen Carter. Graham finished this past season with 45 tackles, 7 for a loss, 3.5 sacks, pass batted at the line. And I think if the Saints could get him, that would be a better pick to me than if Cam Ward fell to 9. Now, one, and Cam Ward has got a bigger upside because he's a quarterback. He's also got a way lower floor because he's a quarterback. I think that Graham has a really, really high floor and a really, really high ceiling. And he plays a position the Saints need desperately. These guys are hard to find. Yes, the Saints need wide receiver help. Yes, the Saints need help at safety. Yes, the Saints need to look to plug holes on the interior of their offensive line. They've got to get more linebackers. They just don't have enough linebackers. They've got to find someone to rush the passer. We talk about this almost every day. There are needs all over the field. But a great place to start, rebuilding your football team, which that's what the Saints are doing. Whether they want to say it or not, it's a fact. A great place to start would be the defensive interior. And it's far, far easier to find someone to go play wide receiver or find someone to go play safety or find someone to go play running back than it is to find someone to be a game changer at defensive tackle. Like, that is just a tough, tough place to find a guy. Chris Jones, first-round pick. Aaron Donald, first-round pick. Jalen Carter, first-round pick. Like, these guys a lot of times come from the top of the draft. And it doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to be a star. But I just like the idea of the Saints finding Mason Graham and him falling into their lap at 9 and him being a transformational piece on their defense. If you don't know Graham's story, he was a 3-star recruit. Michigan inked and developed. And that's how they became a national championship level program, by finding and developing elite offensive and defensive linemen. I mean, that team that won the national championship, yeah, J.J. McCarthy became a first-round pick. We don't know what he's going to be in the NFL because he's hurt. But that team became what it was for 2 years because they kicked people's butts at the point of attack. Period. And Ohio State knows that better than anybody. And Ohio State's got pros everywhere. And Mason Graham was in the middle of that for the last 2 years for Michigan. So to me, if he somehow, some way got there, if you got teams that got too aggressive, that tried to get in the top 10 to go get a quarterback, and people started backing up, and folks decided they wanted to go offensive line instead of defensive line, and somehow, some way, he fell into the Saints' lap at 9, which happens every year. Somebody that we think is a top 7 player falls to 12 or 15. It happens every year. If that could happen at 9 for New Orleans, I think that is the best case scenario in this entire draft for the Saints. Just my thoughts on the matter. I got a couple of whodats back there. Mason Graham. 1, can the Saints draft him at 9? Will he be there? And 2, is he the best potential player the Saints could end up with?
Man, I'm going to be honest, Hunt. I like Mason Graham, but the Saints have so many holes, so we just need best available. If he falls,
well, I think he is. Like, he's top 5 on like everybody's big board, and you're picking 9th.
It's just like we have so much holes, and like any pick we take is not going to be an immediate like, okay, good, we needed this, let's move. It's like we have so many holes. Like if anybody falls, I'm like, get him. Let's say Abdul Carter comes out, I don't know, he has a weird tattoo somewhere and he falls in the drive. You know how it always goes. He falls. Take him. Like I'm at that point where beggars can't be choosers.
Abdul Carter would be very good. There's no doubt about
beggars
that.
Can't be choosers.
Beck?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me who any of those guys. I would say the only one that I would probably not be happy about is, well,
Shador?
Well, no. I think Ashton Jeanty, even though I think he's a really good player and I think he's going to be a really good running back in the NFL,
yes,
I just don't know that that's what the Saints really – I don't know if that's the position of impact the Saints need to take
It
with their
just
first
feels
pick.
like if you do your work properly, you can find your starting running back after Kamara in the 5th round.
Yeah.
If you do it right,
Easy.
you can.
Now,
I'll say
could he be Saquon Barkley, or in terms of impact? Yeah, I think he could be. But still, I think that there's just other positions that you really need to fill before that.
Yeah, I'll say that I'll be disappointed if it's Ashton Genty. Any other pick, I've seen so many different guys mocked there. I'm cool with that. A running back, brother, I might lose my mind. I might be like, no way.
That's our Saints look today. If you're looking for our Saints content, Hunt on Saints on YouTube, wherever you find your podcast. Got a lot of what ifs coming in for What If Wednesday. We'll do that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Genesis of Baton Rouge, probably not a place you've been, just statistically speaking. They've only been at their location there, Airline of Piku, for 2 years. If you hadn't been in the market for a vehicle over the last 2 years, but you are now, just put it on your list. Put it on your list to go by, check it out. I promise you will be impressed. You'll be impressed with the dealership, with the facility. It's first class. It feels like a 5-star hotel when you walk in to the showroom. Got incredible ambiance. Got a little rock waterfall there. Service aisle is squeaky clean. Got a big old awesome coffee machine in there. And their staff is first class. Their brand ambassadors are great to work with. You get behind the wheel of a vehicle and you see that difference. It's a luxury brand of vehicles at a reasonable price. That's the Genesis model. Every single model, from the entry level to the highest end, comes with the same safety features, and they've been awarded the entire line IIHA Top Safety Picks, some of them Top Safety Picks Plus. Go by and see them, Airline at Piku. Check out the inventory at GenesisOfBatonRouge.com. Promise you will not be disappointed. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Find them online at GenesisOfBatonRouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
LSU's been active in the basketball transfer portal. We talked about their first 2 editions yesterday. We'll talk another one here in 30 minutes from right now. Straight up 2 o'clock, a little bit of hoops talk. Plus, how much money is the SEC getting from the NCAA tournament? Hint, it's a lot. Talk about that at 1:45. In the second hour, we got our SEC baseball power rankings as well. Not a ton of movement in the SEC power rankings over the weekend. A lot of sweeps will do that. A lot of the bad teams got swept. A lot of the good teams did a lot of sweeping. So we'll talk about it 1 hour from right now. For now, let's go to What If Wednesday.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. Where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Follow me and ponder the question. What if?
All right, first one here. I'm just going to see this one from the chat, and I have to respond to it, okay? Nookie says, what if the chat didn't fall for your invitation to submit what ifs you don't read? How about that? Well, here's the thing, Nookie. When we have over 15 or 20 what ifs and we have a segment that lasts about 10 minutes, we don't have enough time to read every single one. And so I'm going to pick out the ones that I think are good. Like, let's just say, for instance, this one Greg Lehman put in, which he is referencing a couple of cyclists who are professional cyclists.
Yes.
Asking about what if they did some specific type of strategy in cycling. And why on earth would I ever read that?
That's an atrocious
Because
what if to put in the chat about Greg
there is
Lehman.
literally one person who understands that, and that is him. No one
Atrocious.
else. No one else watches professional cycling. I do watch a little bit because of my father-in-law, but I don't really keep up with
I think
it that
that's
much.
a poor decision by you. You shouldn't even do that to suck up to your father-in-law. It's a stupid thing to watch.
Okay.
It's boring, and nobody wants to care about it.
That's very rude, Hunt. But anyways, we'll move on to the actual what ifs that are worthy of reading.
That aren't that to do with cycling.
The first one, what if the Cubs start going on a winning streak wearing their City Connect
good
jerseys?
uniforms. That's more important
Would
than
you
cycling.
ever be a fan of them wearing those if it almost always resulted in a win? Say they ride them to the World Series. Would you buy and wear a Cubs City Connect jersey, aka the Wrigleyville jerseys, if they win it all?
Okay, so let's start with the back end. No, I would never buy a City Connect uniform.
No.
They're hideous, and I don't buy jerseys, so I'm not gonna wear a jersey. You want to wear a jersey? That's great. I'm not gonna wear a jersey. As far as would I support them wearing them if it resulted in a huge winning streak? No, because they look stupid and it compromises my enjoyment of the game. I dislike when my teams wear stupid stuff. Y'all know this by now. So no, I would not support that because I think they could probably win in the good uniforms if they were winning in the bad uniforms.
Yes.
So that's kind of where I stand on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand that there are many superstitions that are in the game of baseball. And
Yes.
of course, there
I abide
are
by
probably,
many of them.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. And also, it wouldn't shock me to believe or understand that there are many fans who probably look at the records that teams have with their uniforms and say, oh, well, they obviously are going to win because they're wearing the Wrigleyville uniforms today.
Yeah, I don't think
There's a lot of factors that go into whether a team wins. The uniforms don't matter. So I don't care if some random streak happens because they're wearing the Wrigleyville uniforms. It's not why they're winning games. So no, I would never be a fan of them wearing them, even if they start winning games with them.
That's correct.
So moving on here. What if LSU would have never fired Will Wade?
Hadn't done that one before.
Wow, never had that one. Yeah. Would they be playing for a Final Four this weekend? I don't think so. And spare me the narrative that we fired Wade to save football. Okay, well, we all know that's true as well. So I don't really know what we're doing here. But anyways, what if they never fired him?
They would have kept being good. I mean,
Yeah.
I doubt they'd be in the Final Four because not very many teams make the Final Four, and LSU had not proven to that point that they could get to the Final Four. But they would have continued to be good. He had a good team every year. Some of them were elite on offense, some were elite on defense. He never put one together that was really great at both. But I think LSU would have been really good this year if they had never fired him, and they weren't very good this year. So
Yeah.
that's that.
And the last part, saying that if we fired Wade to save football, and if that's true, that's called extortion, and the NCAA would have lost any legal battle that came from that. I don't know that that's really a fair assessment
Yeah, that's a pretty
of the situation.
aggressive way to phrase it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but okay, we'll move on. What if all you... Wait, what is this? Oh, what if you... Okay, I guess they're referencing calling pins and mics
Yes,
as in
that's
journalists
our journalists
and
and
radio
talk show hosts.
personalities. will finally acknowledge that Zion Williams, it's obviously Williamson, is a bust. I'm seeing that you copied these straight from Twitter. The people,
I did. Just
the
straight
people
up
don't
copy and
typically
pasted.
have much regard for
grammar and
punctuation.
That one's from
and
Fadinky,
spelling.
who's a huge fan of the show.
Yeah.
Really enjoys me, and certainly does not have anything to do with affiliation with the morning show on Eagle 98.1.
Yeah, we really appreciate that guy. 30 out of what will be 82 games Zion will have played this year. Basically, he gets paid for 82 games, but only plays half. That's a good deal for him. What if we acknowledge that Zion Williams is a bust?
Yeah, so I don't think anybody that's writing with pens or talking into a mic is suggesting that Zion Williamson has saved the Pelicans franchise.
Or that he's not a bust, by the way.
I mean, at this point, when he's on the floor, he plays great. He's not on the floor very much. And that's the unanimous consensus from everyone who analyzes the Pelicans.
Yep.
You can talk about the Pelicans for like 40 minutes a year like me, or you can talk about the Pelicans for 3 hours a week like Jordan. And everyone says the same thing. Zion's really good when he plays, and he never plays.
Yeah,
that's the entire breakdown of his career.
Also, to me, when we're talking about a bust, there are levels of bust. Like there's Greg Oden, who didn't play. He never played. He was a bust. But there's also guys like
Anthony Bennett.
Yeah, Anthony Bennett was a complete bust. He was never good. Zion, I don't know that you can really consider him a bust at this point. Maybe if he continues on this trend of not playing any games, and
we don't even have to say that.
But yeah,
he doesn't play enough.
He doesn't play enough. That's true. But still, the fact that when he plays, he is an amazing player. To me, that would signal that he's not a bust, because I always group guys that were injury prone. Well, I guess I couldn't say it about Greg Oden too, because he was just mainly problems with injuries. Like I don't know if you can really call guys that were bust because they had so many injuries. It's not their fault they kept getting hurt. Well, maybe in Zion's case, you could say that he had some issues with weight and all that, but I still don't know if it's fair to call people who have injuries a bust, because it's not like they weren't good. Zion is clearly a very talented player, worthy of the #1 pick, but it's just he can never play. So I don't know, Jordan, if you have anything to add, but
I mean, I wouldn't consider him a bust. I'd more say he's disappointing. He's been very disappointing. Like you said, there's levels to bust. Anthony Bennett, bust. When Zion plays, he's like top 20 easily in the NBA. Like when he's locked in, he's top 20. But the problem is, we need you locked in for 82 games, bro, not 30. So
how about just 65? Maybe I'll be okay with that.
The most he played is 70. So you can give us 70, but this year, sit him down, sit everybody down. We're terrible. Trey Murphy literally tore his labrum in the first 30 seconds of a game. Sit everybody down at this point. They don't need to play, so no.
All right, next one. What if Hunt could choose to change anything he wanted in LSU athletics? That's a very broad one.
Really, that's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we can maybe narrow it down to a sport if you want, but I don't know.
I mean, that's some of that's like hypothetical. Like, can I change history, or do I get to? I mean, I think there are a few things that I could think of. Like, obviously, they need to go forward with a new basketball facility that is modernized and has premium seating and the whole thing, and they're working towards that. But I'd do that really quickly. If you're giving me the magic genie, I'll snap my fingers and make it happen for sure. I think there are significant changes that need to happen at Alec Box Stadium as well. I mean, if you're not talking about I get Joe Burrow for the rest of my life, if like that's the thing I would change about LSU athletics. Like, we're talking about in reality and something that's long lasting and impactful. I think facilities are something you could look to immediately, and I would make sure that you've got an up-to-date basketball facility, and then with baseball there, I just think they could have made it a little bit more comfortable for the fans. Like, those metal bleachers are tough. Like, I'm in the press box every game. Trust me, I would switch with you in the metal bleachers for a few games a year if I could, to go down there and hang out and not be working during every game. But I understand they're not very comfortable. So I think there are some things I would do there.
All right, last one here. What if LSU had hired Kevin O'Sullivan instead of Jay Johnson?
I'm glad that they didn't. I was lukewarm on that whole deal when it was going on. I mean, LSU vetted Kevin O'Sullivan. That was a direction they were looking. Kevin O'Sullivan, I think, was looking for a way out of Gainesville, because if you were in Omaha for LSU in Florida, that 3-game series, you know why Kevin O'Sullivan is looking to get out, because they just do not care. They just don't care. They sent 1,200 people to Omaha, which sounds great to some people that don't care at all about college baseball. We had 12,000 people there. So it's just different world. In Florida, is not in the realm that Arkansas or A&M or Mississippi State or Ole Miss or Texas or Tennessee. They just travel better to everything. Florida's got very much like a sidewalk fan base, and they just, even though he's put together an incredible program there, they just don't care. And so he would have, I think, probably looked into it. LSU backed out. It's hard for me to sit there with Kevin O'Sullivan's resume and suggest that LSU wouldn't have been good under Kevin O'Sullivan. However, I can look at the last 2 years, meaning this past season where Florida was the last team in the field, and this year where they're 1-8 in SEC play and don't look like a tournament team, and suggest that maybe as far as the transfer portal and the NIL stuff goes, maybe Florida's not in the position to continue the run of dominance that O'Sullivan's put together over better than a decade. But with LSU's resources and commitment, it's hard to look at what Kevin O'Sullivan's done at Florida and suggest he wouldn't win a lot at LSU, just because I think there are a lot of coaches that can win a lot at LSU, and certainly Jay Johnson is one of them, and I'm really happy that he's here. I can't think of a coach I would rather have at LSU. I know everyone's going to immediately yell and scream and point at Tony Vitello. I'm pretty good with the guy that LSU's got. So that's where I stand on that. That's it for What If Wednesday here on this Wednesday. That Have to Work Week in the rearview mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here. We got a lot to do in hour number 2. We will close out hour number 1 with just some dollars and cents figures that are crazy. Like, we know how good the SEC's been in basketball this year, but they're setting more records over the last 2 weeks. We'll talk about it all when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
So there are folks that have differing opinions on conference allegiance, right? You all know someone, maybe it's you, that just cheers for the SEC no matter what. Pull for the SEC, that's my conference, chanting SEC at bowl games. Like, I want our league to be the best. Not right or wrong, just how you feel. You got people like me that despise everyone in the SEC and never pulls for them at all. I want nothing but awful things for all the athletic programs in the SEC. That's just the way that I'm wired. Always been that way. I don't want good things for them, although I do understand that there are some benefits in your conference being strong from time to time. I want to take in all the benefits of the SEC being the strongest football league and the strongest baseball league. I also want to complain about the fact that everybody's really good and it's hard to win games. So it's just, there's a bit of a double-edged sword there. But it is financially beneficial for your conference to play a lot of games in the NCAA tournament. That is not debatable. And what you call every time your team plays in an NCAA tournament game, the conference gets credit for a unit. And a unit is a monetary value that changes over time. Right now, the units are about $2 million. Every time the SEC plays in a tournament game, the league gets $2 million to split within its 16 institutions. The record all time for units, meaning games played in an NCAA tournament, is the ACC in 2016. They played in 25 games that year. Jacob Beck, do you have any guess as to how many games the SEC will have played this year as of Sunday morning? 25 is the all-time record.
Let's see. There's 2 1 seeds, and they've.
You can do math?
I'm going to say 36.
35 as of Sunday morning. Now, it's guaranteed to be that Sunday morning.
That, yeah.
And you're going to play a 36th in the final. You're already, because you've got, so you're going to play 36 total. That's going to break the record by 11. And when you consider 36 times 2 is 78, you're talking about, or 36 times 2,
Hold
72.
On. There you go.
72. We'll get there. Math, not the most fun.
Nope.
$72 million the SEC will pull from this NCAA basketball tournament and divide among its peers. So while I have enjoyed watching the SEC lose and will be disappointed if an SEC team does, in fact, cut down the nets, I hope Houston or Duke gets it done, you can't argue against the fact that the SEC is raking in cash. I mean, you look at 72 divided by 16. Well, I guess it's divided by 17 because you're going to divide it with the conference in mind. So everybody getting 4.2 milli in the league for this run. It's, I mean, by any measure, and I guess to really punctuate it, one of the 2 SEC teams is going to have to win on Monday. But until you get to that, by any measure, this is the greatest season a conference has ever had in the history of college basketball. You look at the absolute demolition of the rest of the country that the SEC put on in November and December. It was unbelievable to watch the SEC in November and December. I know most of y'all weren't week to week watching that because it's the middle of football season and it's Christmas and all that kind of stuff, Thanksgiving, and not every game's on television and you're not locked into basketball in this part of the world here in our Louisiana bubble in November and December. The SEC was wrecking people. And not like just going out there and taking care of TCU and Cal. Like the Blue Bloods were getting beat down by the SEC. Kansas, North Carolina getting beat. Houston getting beat. Gonzaga getting beat. Purdue getting beat. Like it was, and then you went out in that SEC ACC challenge and went 15-1. Do I have that right?
I think so.
I think the only game the SEC lost was Auburn at Cameron. I think every other team won. It may have been 14-2, but it was something absurd.
Yeah,
And
Auburn did lose.
I know that. I knew that for sure, but I don't know if there was another one.
I don't think so.
I know the first day when LSU played, LSU beat Florida State. The SEC went like 8 or 9-1, and it was. But I think they may have won the rest of it. It was just ridiculous. And then you get to the tournament, and you had 4 of the Elite Eight, 2 of the Final Four.
I mean, you just look at Houston.
7 of the Sweet 16.
Just look at Houston and Duke. Those teams have a combined 7 losses, and I think 3 or 4 of them are from SEC teams.
It's an absolute clinic the SEC put on, and we understand that there were 2 teams that were left out of this whole dance, and LSU is very much one of them. And so while it's interesting to sit here and talk about every SEC team getting $4.2 million because you're going to play 36 NCAA tournament games between 14 teams that got in, you realize that's your competition. And I would like to sit here and tell you, well, they're going to graduate all these guys and they'll be gone. But Tennessee has stayed afloat and has been awesome. And Alabama has stayed afloat and has been awesome. And Auburn is back in the Final Four for the second time in 4 years, and they've been awesome. So I don't know if Todd Golden's going to keep it going. I don't know if Texas A&M losing their coach and 8 seniors is going to be able to keep it going. But I know John Calipari is going to keep getting NBA players to go to Arkansas. Chris Beard's either going to be the coach at Ole Miss or A&M. Chris Jans has been at the tournament 3 years in a row, beg your pardon. So it stands to reason the SEC is going to be pretty good again next year. Pretty competitive again next year. So it's up to LSU to decide they want to join that party. And we feel like they've attempted to make that decision. They may have made the decision. Whether or not they can execute the decision is a whole other thing. And yesterday we talked about the 2 transfer portal ads that LSU brought in this week, and there was another one earlier today. So we're going to pause for SportsCenter. We'll come back on the other side, and I'll tell you about the addition that LSU made today and how I think it's starting to shape this roster, that they're going to try to join this mega $1 million party that the SEC has been throwing for the last 3 weeks. So we'll do that after SportsCenter. If you missed any of today's show, catch it on demand, 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. If you're looking for LSU football, Hunt on LSU. You search that. If you're looking for Saints football, Hunt on Saints. All of it right there at your fingertips. LSU and Louisiana Tech. Recap from last night. Opened our show today. Talked Saints draft. Can they get Mason Graham? Talked about that at 1:15, and we had What If Wednesday at 1:30. We still got plenty to do after SportsCenter, y'all. We're going to go into LSU's transfer portal ad in basketball. We've got our SEC basketball power rankings. We'll see if we can scrounge up some LSU football talk for you in the second hour as well. So lots and lots and lots to do. After work week's in the rearview mirror. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us here on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge. We'll step aside for SportsCenter, get your national headlines. We'll be back with hour number 2 of the Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
This is SportsCenter.
I'm Christine Lisi. ESPN's Shams Charania is reporting the NBA is looking into the finger gun gesture by Memphis's Ja Morant toward the Warriors bench last night. The league will also look into Golden State guard Buddy Hield's gesture. The NBA suspended Morant twice in 2023 for brandishing a firearm on social media. One night after Denver's Nikola Jokic made another case for NBA MVP, 61 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, the man he's trailing in MVP odds gets again a chance to boost his credentials. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander leads the league-leading Thunder against the Pistons. First Take host, Stephen A. Smith.
But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been spectacular and spectacularly consistent. The man had 4 50-point games since the new year started. Shai will go out tonight, he ain't going to drop 61. Shai will go out tonight, drop 45 or something. This is a 45 and 12 or whatever. He's a model of consistency for the best team in basketball.
OKC, Detroit, 9:30 Eastern, ESPN. Carmelo Anthony's been notified he's been elected to this year's class of the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Hey, it's your resident Super Bowl champ, Chris Candy. Coming up Thursday, my former head coach, John Harbaugh, recently signed an extension. I'll tell you if it actually removes him from the hot seat. It's unsportsmanlike, 6 a.m. Eastern, right here on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and ESPNU.
Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hour 2. Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Half the work week officially in the rearview mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. SEC Baseball Power Rankings coming your way 30 minutes from right now. I'll tell you, just not a lot of movement in those Power Rankings, but we'll get to them nonetheless. LSU and Oklahoma tomorrow from Norman. We'll talk to Koki Riley tomorrow from Norman. He'll be there on location for the Advocate. We'll also talk to Joe Healy about the series coming up tomorrow, but some hoops talk coming up right now as LSU is busy in the transfer portal. We know that they spent a lot of time in the portal earlier this week, pulling out their first 2 commitments from the transfer portal. They went out to UNLV and signed what I believe to be the point guard for next year's team. They went and got Deion Thomas from UNLV. That is paired. They paired him with Michael Nwoku, the big from Mississippi State. So as I looked at that and those 2 ads, I go, okay. So you've got your point guard. He's going to handle the ball a significant amount of time. He's going to be the ball dominant player that you run the offense through. Okay, gotcha. And then you go to Nwoku, who you pair with Jalen Reed, and then potentially Robert Miller and potentially Damian Collins. We'll see what those guys do. But Nwoku is the physical presence in the middle of your team. He's the guy whose job is going to be to play the best 5s in the league, to be athletic and big and physical enough to handle them. Damian Collins is not. At this point, Robert Miller is not. You don't want Jalen Reed doing that because you're going to count on him to score a lot. So it makes sense that Nwoku fills that role. And y'all know I like Deion Thomas. I think that's going to be a good ad for LSU at point guard. But I told you when those 2 things happen and I start to look at this team, I go, okay, look at what you've got. You've got a point guard. You've got a big. You've got depth in the front court. They need wings and 2s, and they need guys that can fill it up. And that's what they've got to go get. So today, the news breaks that LSU has landed a wing in Rashad King. Rashad King was clearly the best player at Northeastern this year. He was an all-Colonial Athletic Association player. He led them in scoring. He led them in assists. He led them in steals. He's a 6'6" wing, and that part fits very nicely into what LSU wants to do. Now, I will warn you, because, again, I'm not going to, blow smoke here. I had never heard of Deion Thomas before Monday, and I had never heard of Rashad King before 2.5 hours ago. Never heard of him. But I can look at a stat sheet, and I can watch YouTube videos, and I can get a reasonable take off in 30 minutes of doing that. Now, is it open and shut that I know exactly what I'm talking about? No, I'm not claiming that, but I can tell you what I like. I can tell you what my concerns are. Rashad King is a super, no, I should say was a super high volume player at Northeastern. He's the best player they got. So he plays the most minutes. He led the conference in minutes played almost 1,200 minutes, played 36 and a half minutes a game. He led them in shooting in terms of field goal attempts by a significant amount. He led them in free throw attempts by like a bajillion. He shot 156 free throws for Northeastern. Second place was 85. That's about half. That should tell you how often he's got the ball. He scored 18 and a half a game, but it wasn't the most efficient 18 points you've ever seen. He shot 45% from the floor. He shot 32% from three. He shot a ton of threes, 138 of them, but he didn't shoot a super high percentage. But he did assist 106 times, which I like. You're talking about a guy who averages better than 3 assists a game. Now, again, it's high usage in a bad league. So I had that in mind. But if he improves and is okay with Didon Thomas handling the ball and Jalen Reed, quite frankly, handling the ball a little bit more, and he just becomes kind of a slasher who cuts his shooting attempts down a good bit, you can have hope. You know who was a super inefficient player in the 2023-2024 season, so the one just previous to this one? Cam Carter was just an inefficient player at Kansas State. He shot a lot. It wasn't a high percentage. He wasn't a great three-point shooter. And through work, he became a really efficient player at LSU. If you can do the same type of thing with Rashad King, you've got a good player. If Rashad King is the same type of player at LSU that he was at Northeastern, it's not going to translate all that well. That's just a matter of fit, and that's just a matter of development. And we'll just have to see. Here's one thing that the statistics do bear out, and these are advanced metrics, but they do bear out. Rashad King was a bad three-point shooter off the dribble. Bad. Like really bad. On catch and shoot, he was very good. So, do you feel like at LSU you're going to be able to put some guys around him to get him in more catch and shoot situations? At Northeastern, he's the best player on the team. There's not a lot of catch and shoot opportunities for the best player on the team when he's a 6'6" wing. He's got the ball, he's going to drive, he's going to attack. So can you make sure that he's in a more advantageous situation at LSU than he was at Northeastern? I think we've got enough evidence, and I think people have paid attention enough to know that you don't have to immediately be turned off by the fact that he comes from a bad program and a bad conference. There are players from bad programs and bad conferences littered across the SEC that are putting up monster numbers, and I've gone through them every day. We don't have to do it again. Y'all know at this point that it's not about where you come from, it's who you are as a player. And there are really good basketball players all over the country that can help teams. I like the profile of Rashad King with the assumption of development because they needed length and some guys who can create their own shot. And absolutely, unequivocally, Rashad King has length and can create his own shot. He needs to make a higher percentage of them. How do you make a higher percentage of them? You get better ones. How do you get better ones? You put better players around, create shots for him in that way, and lessen the responsibility he feels to score for his team. Now, LSU really wasn't able to do that for Cam Carter. He had more responsibility at LSU than he did at Kansas State, but he just became a better player. And I think it's reasonable for the coaching staff at LSU to sit down with Rashad King and say, here's what we did with Cam Carter. Here's what we think you can do. Come, let's try. And, of course, there's an NIL conversation that goes right in the middle of that. Here's the thing that LSU is very much missing. Very, very, very much missing. They don't have enough shooters, period. And if they don't add somebody or two people in this portal class that can straight fill it up, I don't need him to be a great defender. I don't need him to be an elite athlete. I don't need him to be an elite assist man and facilitator. I need them to make threes. And if you can't find someone to do that, you're going to have trouble. And if you can, I can start to see how this roster makes a lot of sense. You've got, right now, a big physical presence under the goal in Nwoku. You've got a guy that you think is going to be a scoring force in your front court in Jalen Reed. You've got your ball-dominant point guard who's going to facilitate and initiate the offense in Deion Thomas. You've got a wing here in Rashad King who should be able to be a scorer and a creator on the perimeter, but you can't have these guys creating offense. Like Jalen Reed's not going to have driving lanes if there aren't guys that a defense has to go guard. Deion Thomas is not going to be effective. He's not an elite level athlete. He's a really good player, but he needs space. You've got to create that with your shooters, and the same thing goes for Rashad King. Now, if you take away a lot of those off the bounce threes, you shoot more catch and shoot threes, and you cut those 3-point attempts down by 40 or 50, and then all of a sudden he goes from a 32% three-point shooter to a 38% three-point shooter. Well, that really helps things. But I want somebody that the next time LSU gets a transfer, it might be this afternoon, it might be tomorrow, it might be in a week and a half. I'm going to click on his profile, and I don't care if he went to Kentucky or Kansas or UC Irvine. I don't care. I want to see 38% by his name on the three-point line. That has to happen. Because in this day and age, unless you're going to be Michigan State on the glass or Houston on defense, you cannot get by without a couple of shooters. And LSU right now, as I'm looking at the roster, doesn't have the shooters. Yes, Deion Thomas can shoot it better. Yes, Rashad King can shoot it better. Yes, Jalen Reed has shown the ability to make some threes and stretch the floor a little bit. But you've got to have some guys that strike fear into the opponent from the three-point line. You don't have to play like Alabama, but you've got to make threes. And so I can get on board with some of these ads, but it's incomplete in a big, big way. And LSU knows that. They're not dumb. But you got to go make it happen. And it's clear and evident that they're spending money because they're getting guys that have options to come to LSU and play for a team that was 3-18 in the league. So they're going to get people's attention. Now it's whether or not you can make it happen. So Rashad King is the latest ad for LSU, a 6'6" wing from Northeastern. I'm doing a series every single day called a Portal Profile. We did it for football for LouisianaSports.net. I've now started with my basketball portal analysis. Did Michael Nwoku earlier today. So if you'd like to check that out, you certainly can over at LouisianaSports.net. It is completely free. All right, let's step aside. When we come back, I got a baseball story that I want to get to regarding Gavin Guidry's health. So I'll tell you what we can talk about there next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
So Jay Johnson gave a little update last night on Gavin Guidry's health as it relates to his return to the field. He's not going to pitch this weekend against Oklahoma. And then you've got a midweek game next week, and then you've got Auburn on the schedule. And those games are at the box. I believe that's right. And Johnson said that the most optimistic timeline he could give was Auburn next week. This is dragged out to a point where I've gotten here with a few different pitchers over the years. It has nothing to do with the pitchers individually themselves as student athletes, as hard workers. Like it's just the circumstance. Anything Gavin Guidry gives LSU this year is going to be gravy to me. I am now approaching this bullpen without him. And the reason that is because he hasn't pitched in 8 weeks. And that's a big deal. You don't just take 8 weeks off and then go out there and let it rip. You've got to take some time to build back up. And it comes an inning here, an inning there. And like, you've seen it over the years. I mean, we can go back to the Jake Latz years, which, by the way, he made the big leagues. But even a couple of years ago, last year with Jaden Newt, he came back, he threw one inning, and then sat. And it's just, not all injuries are the same. Some injuries are Tommy John surgery. Sometimes it's a mid-body injury like you deal with Gavin Guidry. But I can't right now in good conscience be like, all right, well, when Guidry gets back in 3 weeks, like they'll slot him back into the bullpen and that'll give him some veteran presence in closing out games. Like that may happen. I'm certainly not ruling it out. I'm not a doctor. I hadn't talked to Gavin. I hadn't talked to the LSU trainer. I hadn't talked to Jay Johnson. You know how injuries go at LSU baseball right now. Like, all I can go off of is what I know. What I know is he has not been well enough to pitch since early February, and that's 8 weeks ago. So, yeah, they've only played 3 SEC weekends. You've got 7 more to go starting tomorrow. You know that he's not pitching in this one. There are 6 more to go after that. Then you've got an SEC tournament. So you've got 2 months to get healthy and get ready to go. And I think, if healthy, absolutely Gavin Guidry can help LSU. But the nature of this injury is such that LSU kind of didn't commit to what was going on early publicly and didn't immediately set out with a timetable to return. It wasn't like, oh, he broke his finger, that heals in 3 to 4 weeks, give him 2 weeks to get ready, he'll be back in 5 weeks, boom. Like, that happens. That hasn't been the case here. It's been, well, he doesn't feel great. Well, hopefully next week. Well, we'll see if we can get him on the mound. Yeah, he's traveling with the team. But there's never here's the issue, here's when it's fixed, you'll see him there. And so my job is to analyze the team. I'm not coaching the team. I'm not developing Gavin Guidry physically. I'm not a physical therapist. Like, I'm analyzing the team for you. And as I analyze the team, I think it's foolish to put many eggs in the Gavin Guidry May basket. Because this is an injury that's dragging out significantly longer than anyone could have foreseen publicly 7 weeks ago. So right now, you've got who you've got. If they get Guidry back, that's obviously a huge help because he has pitched in the highest leverage situations one can possibly pitch. He's pitched in regionals. He's pitched in supers. He's pitched in Omaha. He got the last out of the World Series. I mean, last year when you're closing out North Carolina in the game to force the final game of the regional, and you've got Honeycutt coming up and you got Cook coming up and some of those studs, Guidry was out there and he was hammering the breaking balls. And I thought Honeycutt had hit one to the moon off him on one of those breaking balls, and it landed 2 feet in play, and LSU won the game. But he's pitched in those spots. And I liked what I saw from Gavin Guidry in the fall and before the season. I thought that he had added a little bit to the fastball. I thought the fastball was pushing 93 at times, and he's always got that breaking ball, and they were working on a changeup. And there was a chance that Gavin Guidry was going to compete as a starting pitcher for LSU this year. That ship is clearly sailed, and now it's just a matter of can they get anything out of him. I know this about Gavin Guidry. The dude loves to play for LSU and will do anything he can for LSU. You're talking about a guy whose dream and realistic dream, once you sign scholarship papers to come to LSU, was to be the shortstop once Jordan Thompson moved on. And he's not going to get that opportunity. He's pitcher. And so now it's not the adversity of, well, you're not going to go out there and play defense, you're not going to hit. Now it's the adversity of, well, you've been sidelined with something that's out of your control for 2 months. How do you fight through that? And my sincere opinion on that is that Guidry will persevere through that if he's given an opportunity. We just don't know if the body's going to cooperate with him. And when you hear the answers that continue to be non-committal, and you never hear Jay Johnson go, yes, he's close. He's really close. Or, oh, yeah, I had a big step forward with a bullpen yesterday. You never hear that. When Jay Johnson gets asked in a press conference, hey, what's the deal with Gavin Guidry? The answer always is, and I'm paraphrasing here very much, but it's always something like, yeah, we'll see, hopefully, that 2 weeks, and we can get him out on the mound. Like, it's always talking in circles about, like, hopefully something good can happen, but nothing has yet. It's 2 months in. I still think for you to sit there as you're talking about this team and just assume that he's going to come back, kind of like some people did with Shores last year. Like, oh, if Shores can come back, like, really? Now, I get it. Tommy John's one thing and a mid-body injury is another thing. But I'm analyzing this team without Guidry. If Guidry shows up, you take that as some lagniappe. That's where I am on this. So no real update on Gavin. I'm sure Jay Johnson, because he's put the Auburn series as a goal, I'm sure he'll be asked about Gavin next week. I hope there's news, but to this point, that would be ambitious to hope for. So Gavin Guidry, not going to be able to pitch this weekend. They'll see if he can potentially throw next weekend against Auburn. That's a look at LSU baseball. If you missed our opening segment on the show today, we talked LSU's baseball's win over Louisiana Tech. I really liked what I saw from LSU last night, and we'll certainly preview LSU in Oklahoma tomorrow. We'll do it with Joe Healy, also with Koki Riley, who will be in Norman, Oklahoma for the Advocate coming up this weekend. So let's step aside. Let's come back. Let's do some SEC baseball power rankings on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
This feels like pretty big news. Chris Beard, number one target for Texas A&M, says he's staying at Ole Miss. It was always a little weird. The massive inferiority complex that Texas A&M has for Texas, and you realize that Chris Beard is a Texas alum. And so to go back and coach that team, I know that it happens all the time. Very, very famous stuff. Vince Dooley went to Auburn. Pat Dye went to Georgia. They coached the other one and are now legends there. It happens all the time, and so it's not necessarily a deal breaker by any stretch of the imagination. I just always found it odd. If you told me, and I realize that if somebody pays you $7 million to do something, you generally do it with bells on, but you told me I needed to go coach Alabama, go coach Mississippi State's baseball team, that would be weird for me. And I'm sure Chris Beard doesn't feel that way. Certainly had a great run at Texas Tech, which is, little brother to Texas over there as well. But just going to A&M and being the coach there feels weird. Now, I heard it explained a different way this morning when I was talking about it, and it's maybe Chris Beard's pissed at Texas because he feels like he was unjustly fired from a dream job. And maybe that's true. I don't know how he feels. But either way, for him to spurn Texas A&M and that money in his home state where he's got apparently he's got some family in the Woodlands, which is pretty close to College Station. So that's a big deal for Ole Miss because they're going to get him for another year, and we'll see how long he ends up staying there. I think we all kind of thought that Lane Kiffin would move on really quickly from Ole Miss, and he's still there too and winning a lot of games. So interesting stuff that Chris Beard is going to keep the job there at Ole Miss. All right, let's do some SEC baseball power rankings.
Hunt's SEC Power Rankings. The Tennessee Volunteers.
I still think the Vols are the best team in the league. They've got a ton of velocity in the pitching staff. Doyle's great on the front end, and they hit like crazy. So it's not a difficult thing. I think Tennessee is the best team in the league. I'm curious how this weekend with Texas A&M is going to go in Knoxville, but I think Tennessee is the best team, so I'll take them at number one.
The Arkansas Razorbacks.
The Hogs are just hitting like crazy now, which is nuts because we thought they weren't going to be able to hit, and they didn't really hit the first weekend. But Charles Davilan is hitting .402 with 9 homers. Cuyo Aloy is hitting .377 with 8 homers. Bahiwa Aloy is hitting .360 with 10 homers. Brent Iredale is hitting .345 with 9 homers. Logan Maxwell is hitting .373 with 8 homers. You get the point. All the way through that lineup, they're terrorizing the baseball. And I think, despite Vanderbilt's record and what I will say about them a little bit later on, I think Vanderbilt going to Nashville and sweeping that series and hitting the way Arkansas did was impressive to me. So give me the Hogs, number 2.
The LSU Tigers.
Still have LSU at number 3. That has not changed from last week. Tigers did a good job of sweeping Mississippi State over the weekend in some adverse circumstances with game times and late first pitches and rain and all that kind of stuff. So good stuff from LSU. I've got them there at 3, same spot as last week.
The Georgia Bulldogs.
Still got Georgia in the same spot. They don't have an ace. They don't have a lot of proven arms. They're hitting out of their mind. And that is kind of exactly what they did last year. And it got them all the way to Omaha. So there's something to be said for it. But I have some trepidation about trying to approach it with that little production consistently from your pitching staff. So I've got Georgia at 4.
The Texas Longhorns.
Despite last night's loss in the midweek to Texas State, Texas still a very good team. I like Spencer at the front of the rotation. I think that they've really found something in Riojas in their number 3 spot. Saw that against LSU 2 weeks ago, and he was good against Ole Miss, Missouri last week as well. So, yes, it hurts them badly that they blew their the Big 12 Player of the Year from last year, who's out until probably the postseason right now. That's a big loss for Texas. But I still think it's a good team. I think they got a great coach, good pitching coach as well. So I'll leave them there at 5 for the time being.
The Alabama Crimson Tide.
Alabama's doing a good job. They're pitching it well. They won 2 out of 3 against Oklahoma in a really competitive series over the weekend. Of course, as I mentioned every week, they've got the best player in the league with Justin LeBron. So that's always a good place to start. I got the Tide at number 6.
The Ole Miss Rebels.
I didn't move anybody in the top 7, and I do this independent of last week's ranking. I just do it how I think, and then I go back and look at last week's, and I see what the moves are. Nobody moved in the top 7, which I think is reassuring that I'm at least on the same page with me week to week. Ole Miss is doing great offensively. I like LA at the front end. They do have issues in the middle and the back end of the rotation, and they're going to do some changing there as far as some of those older guys, Mason Nichols, what are they going to do with them? But it's a team that's got a good base. They do have some holes in the back end of their pitching staff.
The Oklahoma Sooners.
I moved the Sooners up 3 spots after losing a series, which is interesting, but I do feel okay about it because when you've got a really good ace like they do, and they are swinging the bat pretty well, you can make some noise. They're making a change. Cam Johnson's out of the rotation now. He's just walking entirely too many people, and that was pretty predictable. But the offense is something that has been interesting to watch because they're doing it a little bit different way. Now, they're not completely neglecting the home run like Kentucky did last year, but they are running more than anybody in the SEC. They lead the conference in stolen base attempts and steals. We'll talk about that with how it relates to LSU coming up this weekend. But I like Oklahoma okay. They're 8th.
The Auburn Tigers.
Auburn drops a spot to number 9. They do have an offense that's top-heavy that I like. Cooper McMurray and Ike Irish are very good. Sam Dutton has been good for them. They don't really have a role for Cade Fisher. They tried to kind of reclaim him from Florida, and it hasn't really worked. So you don't have enough pitching at Auburn, I don't think. But I do think they're an NCAA tournament team, and I've got them at number 9.
The Kentucky Wildcats.
Kentucky does go get 2 out of 3 in College Station, not without controversy. They have got the lowest strikeout total offensively in the SEC. They're second in the SEC in bunts. So you're still talking about a team that is putting the ball in play, even though they don't slug a lot. They're sack bunting. They're 14th in home runs. They get hit more than any offense in the SEC. That's how they do offense, and I don't really love that as a high-end SEC baseball team. In terms of their pitching, they're 10th in the league in ERA, and they strike out the fewest batters. I don't find that as a sustainable recipe to win games year over year. And they're going to try it continuously with Nick Mingione, but I don't love it.
The Vanderbilt Commodores.
They got swept by Arkansas. I dropped them back 2 spots. They are last in the SEC in home runs, just 24 in 29 games. They're last in the SEC in slugging percentage. They are 14th in the SEC in doubles. Here's the good news for Vanderbilt. They have struck out more hitters than anybody in the SEC, and they're 4th in ERA. They do have some talent on the mound. They do not have talent and game breakers in their lineup. That is the downfall of this program under Tim Corbin in this NIL era, where they don't have the advantages they once had. And so that's where they've been hit. They're not swinging the bats very well. That's why I've got them at 11.
The Florida Gators.
I don't have anybody change the rest of the way from last week. I've got Florida there at 12. I'm torn on what to do with Florida because of their injury situation. It's just really bad. There's no 2 ways to say it. But I do think there is talent if they can get healthy and not play Tennessee and Georgia, who they've played in the first 3 weekends. Lost 2 out of 3 against Ole Miss. At Ole Miss, that's not a crime, but they need to start picking it up against some of the lesser teams on their schedule. That's got to start this weekend. Florida's at 12.
Texas A&M!
A&M's at 13. They're the worst hitting lineup in the SEC right now. That's just hard to believe, but it's true at this point. Jace Laviolette became the all-time A&M home run king over the weekend, so shout out to him. Wish he would have been at LSU. He'd have some jewelry if he could have come to LSU, but he didn't. He decided not to go through with his commitment to LSU, and he went to A&M, and he may not be in the postseason this year, but he has a lot of home runs, and he's going to be very rich soon, so I think he'll be okay.
The Mississippi State Bulldogs.
State just doesn't win games. I don't know another way to put it. They have lost 7 of their 8 league losses by 1 or 2. And then they got blown out by LSU in the game on Sunday over the weekend. Sunday morning. It's so weird. But yeah, Mississippi State just doesn't win. They're in games, they lose them. That's Mississippi State baseball right now, and it feels like there is a coaching change coming in Starkville at the end of the season.
The South Carolina Gamecocks.
They just made a coaching change at South Carolina, but they don't have very good players, and Paul Maneri is learning that the hard way. Gamecocks are 1-8 in league play and kind of not – they don't have a strength. South Carolina doesn't have a strength. That's a hard thing to say. It is what it is. I got South Carolina at 15.
The Missouri Tigers.
Missouri's 0-9. I don't have another place to put them. Texas went up to Columbia and swept them. And look, I think if you put the over-under on SEC wins at 4.5 for Missouri, you probably have to side on the under.
We did this a couple weeks ago, I think.
I know. But we have 3 more games in the rearview mirror, and they didn't win one. So it changes the discussion. I don't think they're going to win 5 league games. That's really, really difficult to think about in a sport that is tailored to some, quality competition and the lesser team winning more often than any other sport that we cover. But they don't win, so they got to go last. That's your SEC Power Rankings. Tennessee first, Arkansas second, LSU third. That did not change. Neither did 4 through 7. Georgia, Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Oklahoma moved up 3 spots to number 8. They'll take on the Tigers this weekend. You got Auburn at number 9. Kentucky at 10. Vanderbilt drops to number 11, and the bottom 5 are the same. Florida at 12. A&M at 13. Mississippi State at 14. South Carolina at 15. And Missouri at 16. That is your SEC Power Rankings. Got any hot takes on that, Beck?
Well, as usual, you have Vanderbilt too low. Not surprised there.
Yeah, the worst hitting team in the league.
Yeah, but they have really good pitching, Hunt.
Well, how they doing in the league? They lost 2 out of 3 to Auburn.
They're pretty good.
They got swept. They're pretty good. Auburn?
They're not bad.
They're not bad, but they're not in the top of the league. They got swept by Arkansas. Who else did Vanderbilt play?
Pretty good.
I'll find this here. Vanderbilt played A&M, and they swept A&M. So that's why they were in decent shape. But yeah, it's just like Vanderbilt had monster talent for years under Tim Corbin because as a private school, they had scholarship advantages that very few other teams had. Now, LSU had and has tops, which absolutely helps. So I'm not suggesting that LSU didn't get any help from the scholarship overlords, but Vanderbilt had more. And that's why they had so much talent during Corbin's massive run there where they won 2 national championships. However, that well is running dry a little bit, and now everybody can get paid. And Corbin doesn't like the portal and doesn't want to work the portal. And now you've got a situation where they don't have the financial advantages that they had for a while. And now it just feel there were rumors that Corbin was going to step down last year. I would not be shocked if he steps down after this year. That's not some kind of hot take. I'm not the first person that's brought that up, and maybe he doesn't. They pay him pretty well, pretty good gig, pretty good city to live in. But thinking that Vanderbilt's on the precipice of becoming what they once were, they're not.
Yeah, no, I was mostly joking just because I'm the Vandy guy. I have to stomp for the anchor boys. So
you're stumping for the Whistler here. Do you feel good about that?
No, I don't. I feel pretty bad about that.
Okay, can I say something?
Yeah, it's your show.
It is. No one is going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. The listenership's not going to believe this. No one is going to believe this. When I watch Vanderbilt play baseball, which is a reasonable amount, I never hear the Whistler. I heard him when I was at the SEC tournament and I was there in person. But on the television copy, I never hear it. And I don't know why that is. My 9 personality in the Enneagram thing says I don't notice things I'm not paying attention to, and I'm not going to pay attention to that. But I never hear the Whistler. Do you hear the Whistler?
I definitely heard him during the SEC tournament, and I don't watch. I definitely don't watch as many Vandy games as you do. So, but I definitely hear him when I've watched Vanderbilt playing the SEC tournament. I've heard him.
Yeah, I heard him in person at the SEC tournament when I was there, and I was there in 12, 13, 14. I was there, but I do not recall hearing him at any other point. So that's just my experience with said Vandy Whistler. All right, let's come back and close it out. We'll also talk about the LSU women's basketball player that has entered the transfer portal. We'll do that all coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Every car that is on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. 3 years of complimentary maintenance. How's that sound? Complimentary. We like complimentary things. 3 years complimentary maintenance. That's what happens when you buy a new Genesis over at Genesis of Baton Rouge. You also get valet maintenance, which means they will come to you. They will pick your car up. They will take it back to the dealership. They will handle the maintenance. They will leave you a loaner so that you can get around and get on about your day. And then when it's done, they bring it right back to you. And since it's complimentary, you don't have to pay for that. That's a pretty good gig over there at Genesis of Baton Rouge. That's not it. 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty on every new Genesis purchase. 10 years, 100,000 miles. Whether you're in the market for an SUV, whether you're in the market for a sedan, they've got a Genesis there that fits your lifestyle and what you're looking for. And once you get behind the wheel of a Genesis, you will understand the differences. Most of you that are listening have probably never been behind the wheel of a Genesis. Change that when you're in the market for a vehicle. Stop by Genesis of Baton Rouge. They're at Airline and PQ. It's GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
.45 ESPN Baton Rouge and the Baton Rouge Clinic bring you the 2025 Dreams Come True Radiothon. Dreams Come True is an organization designed to help grant dreams for children with life-threatening illnesses and their families. The Dreams Come True Radiothon is also presented by Lewis Mechanical, Patient Plus, and Action Industries, plus Subaru of Baton Rouge, Service Chevrolet, Luba, and Duplessis Pool Builders. Visit 1045ESPN.com to help us reach our goal, and together we can make dreams come true.
So I got some news today. LSU women's basketball, their season ended about 48 hours ago. Well, I guess that was Sunday. Yeah, that was Sunday, and it's Wednesday, so it was a little more than that. But last year, POA has decided to enter the transfer portal. I did not realize. I've watched her play a lot. I guess I don't pay a lot of attention to measurables unless you're like Lauren Betts from UCLA. I did not realize she was 5'11". That is a lot of length for a guard. But a bench player for the majority of her 3 years in Baton Rouge, but certainly a rotational piece for LSU. She averaged 2 points a game this past year on this team. She'll enter the transfer portal. She may have 2 years left based on my interpretation. She played
the Diego Pavia rule.
She played a year at JUCO, so you get that one back, and she only played 3 at LSU. So I think she's got 2 years left to play, and we'll look elsewhere for playing time. Obviously not an offensive force, but somebody that LSU counted on for some ball handling, some defense as well, and she'll look to go elsewhere. LSU's got some work to do in the transfer portal. I don't cover LSU women's basketball as closely as Matthew Bruni and some of the other guys, Scott Rabelais, day to day, but I do know that LSU didn't have as much success in the transfer portal with this past team as they have in some of the other years with Angel Reese and with Anissa Morrow and some of the players that they brought in there. So you're going to look to fill a lot of roster spots out of the transfer portal. Kim Mulkey was on with the guys on off the bench yesterday, and she was talking about just how busy they are trying to get as talented a players as they possibly can to LSU. I would imagine they would have liked to have POA back as a defensive player and kind of fill the role that she's filled the last couple of years, but now another scholarship opens up, so LSU can certainly jump in and try to fill that with someone else. So last year, POA headed to the transfer portal. She will look elsewhere outside of Baton Rouge for the next, what I believe to be 2 years of eligibility. All right, Beck, we got Take It or Leave It?
Yeah, I got a few here.
That's great to hear.
Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
All right, how about this? As we know, the Cincinnati Bengals have tied a very significant percentage of their salary to T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow for the foreseeable future. And so,
yeah, I don't love that.
Yeah, I don't either. But some of the players for that team are going to be probably falling to the wayside because of that. It seems that maybe Trey Hendrickson could be one in the future. He was not very happy with some of the comments from Cincinnati Bengals executive Katie Blackburn, who said, quote, "I think he should be happy at certain rates that maybe he doesn't think he'd be happy at. I think some of it is on him to be happy at some point, and if he's not, that's what holds it up sometimes. So, it takes him to say yes to something, and also we have all the respect in the world for him." That's like a classic, with all due respect, you're wrong, and I think what you think is stupid.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no win there for the executive.
No, that doesn't make any sense why you would say that. But anyway, yeah, take the Bengals.
They're playing with the money.
Trey Hendrickson, take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. The guy is one of the top 5 sack men in the NFL right now, and that's something you desperately need to have. I just I just don't understand. I do understand what they're doing. They're trying to make Burrow happy so he can throw the ball all over the place and score a ton of points. They need to spend more money on their defense, which is not good enough this past year. And Hendrickson's a big piece of that. Now, that being said, I'm looking at an executive there who has Trey Hendrickson locked in on a deal, and it hurts his ability to further better the team that Trey Hendrickson already plays for by paying him more money. So it's just part of it. It's part of the world. You can't pay everybody all that they want. And so that's why I get where they're coming from. I just wish that they would reallocate funds and not pay T. Higgins $1 bajillion.
Yeah, probably not going to be the best for the long-term health of the team. Next one here, Hunt, we will talk about your favorite sport, your favorite sport, and also your favorite league.
We're talking the Premier League?
No, we're talking about Live Golf, Hunt.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yes, 5-time major champion Brooks Koepka, of course, a Live golfer, admits he hoped the Live Golf League would be further along in its 4th season as it prepares to play its first tournament in the U.S. starting Friday at Trump National Doral. He says, I think we all hoped it would be a bit further along, and that's no secret. No matter where you're at, you always hope everything is further along, but they're making progress, and it seems to be going in the right direction.
It does not seem to be going
in the right direction. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave it. They're not going in any direction. They're just paying bajillions of dollars to golfers who no one watches anymore. So that's how that goes. I do want to address something to Bayou 4 chat. My guy Brambo, appreciate you being in the chat. This is one of the most puzzling things to me. It comes up in every sport when we do these power rankings. People think it is utterly outrageous to rank teams below teams that beat them. I mean, above teams that beat them. And Brambo has done this with LSU and Texas in power rankings. How could you rank Texas below LSU? Texas beat LSU 2 out of 3. Well, if you start to play that game, it doesn't work. And I think we're all aware that the better team doesn't always win games. And it really stuns me that almost every time I do this exercise, people bring this up. LSU in 2023 lost 2 out of 3 to Mississippi State, who did not make the NCAA tournament. So if I was doing power rankings for that, I would have to rank Mississippi State above LSU? No. You take the whole body of work, you take the collection of talent. And Brambo says, well, because I mentioned that Texas lost to Texas State last night, so Texas State would have to be ranked ahead of Texas. And no, that's a one-off. LSU had 3 chances and they lost 2 out of 3. Well, that's the same thing I'm talking about with LSU and Mississippi State 2 years ago. Like, the lesser team wins all the time in all kinds of sports. And this same argument comes up time and time and time again. And then midstream ad says Texas is 8-1 in conference. I know. I didn't rank them 15th. They're 2 spots behind. A really good league. I think LSU's got a better ace. I think LSU's got a deeper lineup. I think LSU is better defensively. And Texas just lost one of its best players to an injury that's going to cost him the next 7 weeks. So it's not that difficult a concept. And
also, I think, when the number is such a big thing, but it's like just because someone is 3rd and someone's 5th doesn't mean that there's that much of a gap between them. And it's actually interesting with LSU and Texas because they both have sweeps over Missouri and Mississippi State on a scheduling anomaly there. And the only separator is the games they played against each other. And it was 2 out of 3 in Austin. So they're very close. I think LSU's better. Yeah, I mean, just if LSU plays that series in Baton Rouge, would most people not say that LSU probably would win? I think LSU would probably win. Well, okay. Might help LSU's pitching staff throw it over the plate a little bit, which they really struggled to do. So, all right, that's it for a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Excited for tomorrow's show. We'll have Koki Riley from Norman. We'll have Joe Healy setting the table for SEC Baseball. We'll have Chris Blair as well. So lots to get to on tomorrow's show. If you missed any of today's show, catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. Matt's going to drive you home on After Further Review. We're back tomorrow, same time, same place for a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Jonathan Carver and his team, phenomenal folks to work with. They've got a lot of creative solutions in the insurance world, and that's really where things are moving because let's be honest, a lot of people are not thrilled with their commercial insurance in terms of the premium and the process with which things play out. That's just the nature of how the market has evolved over the last 10 years. But captives are something that's brand new, relatively speaking, in the insurance game. And if you haven't looked into that and you're a business owner or you are a controller or a CFO, or maybe you're a risk manager, and you pay a lot for insurance in terms of premium but haven't looked into captives, contact the Highland Insurance Group and start that process. Jonathan Carver and his team do that kind of stuff all the time, and they are happy to introduce you to it if it is a new concept to you. It's the Highland Insurance Group right here in Baton Rouge. They can help you out statewide. It's the Highland Insurance Group online at HighlandIG.com.